Are your plants looking a little rough? You got yellowing plants, dry, cracked soil, and not enough growth? Chances are your soil is dead. We're going to show you cheap, efficient, and easy ways to bring that soil back to life and bring your garden to the highest level. Your soil's probably not dead. It's usually one of these three problems. You're not getting enough light in the garden, the structure is messed up, you're overwatering, or there's not enough organic matter, i.e. fertilization, for your plants to be healthy. Sunlight is a big thing we see. People putting gardens in shady spots. We need to take observation of the area and see that we're getting at least 6 hours of sun, closer to 8, closer to 12 is even better for most plants that we want to grow in the garden. But sunlight is an essential piece of the photosynthesis process, and that process won't start if you don't have enough sunlight. In this area of Southwest Virginia, we have heavy clay soils that the pH needs to be addressed with lime typically. You can understand your pH better by buying a cheap pH test kit at the store, adding water to your soil, shaking it up, and it'll tell you what you need to add. But in this area, it's most likely lime. A byproduct of the chicken process is chicken poop, and that can actually change the pH of your soil. That's why we've had so much success rotationally grazing chickens through our garden. The next thing to be concerned about in your garden is structure. Soil happens in layers, and that comes from the degrading of organic matter on top of the soil over time, builds different strata in the ground. That's where microbes, bugs like to live and do their thing. If you have heavy clay soils and compaction, it's difficult for those bacteria, worms, to do their thing. So we have to add a little bit of oxygen a lot of times. The way we really like to do that is with daikon radishes, because it adds organic matter that we'll talk about in a second while changing the structure. Another way to do that is tilling, though that has some drawbacks as well as advantages in the system as well. But however we need to amend the structure, that's what we need to work on to ensure healthy plants. Everything rots, and that's an easy way of talking about the nitrogen cycle. The easy fix for pretty much any problem in your garden is just adding more organic matter. That jumpstarts the life cycle of all the things that make your plants healthy and happy. We use things like chicken manure. At the same time, compost, which we've shown you before, how we use scraps from our garden to create a dense fertilizing dirt that we spread throughout our system, either on top of plants and let the rain take those nutrients into the soil, or till it into the garden, particularly as we're making spring beds or closing up the garden for the end of the year. But adding organic matter, whether it's green manure in like chop and drop systems, or straw mulch, or compost, or chicken, or cow manure, incorporating that into the system is how we build healthy soil so our garden can thrive year-round. The one pro of tilling is that it makes our soil really nice and crumbly and ready to accept seed if we plant it or transplant it from the greenhouse. But there are a lot of downsides with tilling. Think of the soil as an apartment complex with bugs and worms and microbes living in different floors of that complex. If we came through and there was an earthquake, it would take people a really long time to rebuild the apartment complex and find where they were living. Tilling is essentially the same thing in the soil. When we till, we blend all those microbes, bugs, worms together, and it takes a long time for them to rebuild the structure. Also, tilling, particularly in this heavy clay soil of Southwest Virginia, creates a hard pan underneath that crumbly top. Now, what that does when it rains and moisture enters our growing bed, it creates essentially a dam underneath so that the water can't infiltrate any lower than what we've tilled already. Tilling isn't really sustainable, and it often results in year after year requiring more and more tillage. We want to design our systems to mimic that of nature. Notice every year the forest isn't tilling itself. So the way that we incorporate tilling into our system is we till when we first want to start our grow beds, and that creates the nice crumbly soil that we then add compost to and go back and broad fork. The broad forking allows that compost to seep down into the structure, and it breaks apart that hard pan. So then when we come back and till, and we're not actually tilling, I learned this word recently, we're more tilthing, which is just disturbing the top crust of the soil so that we can easily get down below it with our plants. It's simply not sustainable because every time we till, we're like a supercharger forcing more air into the engine for more horsepower. We're forcing more oxygen into the equation and burning up those microbes that we've spent so long to build in chopping and dropping, adding organic matter through compost, green manure. We build these systems so that we have less work over time and for more abundance in the end. And the great thing about employing these systems into your small scale garden is you don't need to go out and buy heavy equipment like a tiller or a plow or a tractor. You're saving all this money and working the way that nature was designed for us to work. We don't have to have a huge market garden to reap the benefits of sustainable design. Using compost to close loops from your kitchen waste, using green manure, weeds that are just growing organically, we can chop and drop those, mulch them in place, sequester loss of water through evaporation, and make our garden soil better over time. On a small scale, not only a large scale, but these methods work wherever you are, because the earth is the same, the sunlight is the same, the water is the same. When we make our garden the way that nature intended, we get the most abundance, and we don't have to bring in petrochemicals, added expenses, and build systems that require us to go back to that well of fossil fuel year after year after year. It's less work, more abundance. That's the bottom line, because Scott Vernon said so. We've assembled all these tips and more into our Spring Garden Success Guide. You can get it in the link below.